Welcome back, friends. We are here today with a special guest. Special, not like special, but special.
I don't know. It could go both ways.
A little bit special. His name is Adam Brooks. He is a phenomenal human being with an amazing brain that I am really, really excited to talk to you today.
Mostly human.
Mostly? Which are the
Mostly
parts?
human. Let's not get into that just yet.
That's a podcast for a different day.
All day.
So you and I were having a conversation about brains.
Right. It was just in passing, right? And it was one of those things where we said something in passing and then it sounded like it was going to be a whole conversation. And so here we are.
Yeah, and here we are. And so do you want to...
Yeah, the very first thing that I thought of that got me started thinking down this rabbit hole was sometimes people with good intentions who don't understand a neurodivergent brain will say something that they think is good, call it a good-ism, that's actually damaging to somebody in the neurodivergent space. So they might say, just decide to feel better. Just make the conscious choice. Or they might say, get more exercise, or eat better, or sleep more, or sleep less. And it's like a common sense good-ism, right?
Yeah.
They're things that people have found.
It's a meme.
Yeah, if you feel bad, it must be one of these things. And so they just toss the solution into the mix as if to say, I'll be your savior. Let me give you this thing that's going to solve all your problems.
Okay, so can we go back for just a second, just in case we have anybody that isn't completely familiar with what neurodivergent means?
Sure.
So what would you say that includes?
My understanding is it includes a realm of people whose brains work differently from what you would consider the general populace.
Okay.
Call it ADHD or high-functioning autism or Asperger's syndrome, things that make people tick in a different way than what most people would understand.
I've heard it, neurodivergent, neurospicy,
Yeah.
neurodifferent.
I like spicy.
I like spicy.
I like spicy.
It makes me happy.
Yeah.
Like gives it a little flair, you know?
And it's not bad,
It's not bad.
Some people like spice, some
I
people
like
don't like
spice.
spice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep it spicy.
Yeah. Okay, so I would say a lot of people fall into that category.
Well, of course you do.
Why would you say that, Adam?
Well, because so many people, all right, people who fall into that category attract other people who fall into that category.
Yeah.
And I would posit that maybe you've got a little bit of neurospicy going on. And if you do,
I don't think it's a secret.
then you've got people around you who are also falling into that category.
That's a very good point.
Our world is neurospicy.
That is very true.
Yeah.
So Adam and I spend a lot of time together. We have actually known each other for
8 years.
38 years.
That's a long time.
38 years. I was going to say 41, but I'm older than you.
Before I was formed in the belly,
Yeah.
you knew me.
Adam is my brother. So we have known each other for a very long time. And just such a freaking cool human being.
Thank you.
But anyway.
Honored to be part of this connection.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to these
Good-isms.
I love that term.
The verbal memes.
Right.
Yeah.
When it comes to these good-isms, how have you found that they have hurt you or served you?
So the thing that I've experienced, and even just recently, I was talking to a mental health care professional, someone who should know pretty well.
Qualified, licensed.
Very. Yeah, is a psychiatrist with a heavy workload, obviously somebody whose opinion matters to the people they're expressing it to. They're going to take it with some weight.
Yeah.
And he was asking about my habits, what I had been doing for the prior week. Now,
Was he like, this is your fault that you feel this way?
it felt that way.
Okay.
It really felt that way. But what he asked was, what have you been doing this week since you weren't working? I'm self-employed. Sometimes my workload varies. I'll have a very heavy week or 2 or 3 or 5. And then sometimes I just have nothing. And
Which is
maybe that's
so-
by choice, or maybe that's because just nobody called.
Yeah. So
And that's
great
fine.
for the neurodivergent, though,
Yes.
to have that space for the ups and downs.
I thrive on that flexibility.
Yeah.
So it was a week when I hadn't been working because nobody had been calling. And so he said, what have you been doing for this week? It was also a week in which I had been very depressed. And he said, you should remember to stay active.
Did he shit on you?
Yeah, he
That's
should on me.
so rude.
Yeah, I know. Should's a pretty divisive word.
Right?
Yeah.
And we do it to ourselves and we do it to
Obviously.
others.
Yeah.
It's never nice, no matter which
It's
way
not
you do
nice.
it. Mm-mm.
No. So he told me that I should remember to stay active, which started this mental cascade for me, right?
Totally.
Where I started out by thinking all of the times, like pulling all of the times from my memory when I have also told myself that I should be more active, I should be doing more. which carried an enormous weight with it. And then also all of the times when I combated that to say, no, I should take time for myself. I should take time to
Yeah.
rest. And ultimately, in the midst of all of that cascade, what I was able to get out to the mental health care professional was, can you recommend an amount of time that I should be active?
You're like, can you stop my mental spiraling for 1 second by
Right.
giving me something a little more concrete?
Let me pause this cascade and just ask for a prescription
Yeah.
instead of a vague idea. Because it was kind of like he said, you should really take some medicine so you feel better, which, of course, in my mind would have brought up all of the medicine that existed. And then I would have to sort through medicines that I've tried and medicines that I haven't tried. And then I
Yep.
would have to, research to figure out what would be best. Anyways, that's the cascade. And so when I asked him, can you recommend a specific amount of time that I should stay active? He further demonstrated his ignorance of my condition by saying, it's really a balance you have to find for yourself.
And okay, I know it's maybe a little bit off subject
Go
here,
ahead.
but can we just take a break and realize how much of the quote unquote healthcare industry is that?
Right.
That's the sick care industry is that. It is, you go in with something and they're like, well, why don't you tell me? Or, well, let's try this, and this.
Yeah.
And I know that there is a time and a place, but I think that so many people are really, really frustrated like that.
Yeah.
With the same issue.
My biggest frustration is that in mental health care, you have to self-report and then you have to self-sort through solutions.
Yeah.
And you have to be the one to tell this is working, this is not working,
Yeah.
so that the person with the authority can prescribe something new or prescribe you more of the thing that's working. It's very frustrating. I really wish there was a way that they could take my input, which is probably flawed, out of the equation. But
Yeah.
I think this is the best we have so far.
Yeah, which is so crazy given all the technology that we have. Like we can scan the brain, we can test the chemical levels, we can look at different parts of the brain, but we can't actually tell you what's wrong.
I also had an idea a little while back for an option where your peers could report on viewed symptoms.
Ah, interesting.
And so I started an informal questionnaire. It's basically the ADHD questionnaire that mental health care professionals use to determine if you would qualify as having ADHD. And I invited people to let their peers opine on whether or not they exhibit these symptoms.
Oh, interesting.
People wouldn't do it, though. They thought it would be insulting.
See, and that's what I was about to say. Do you think people would err on the side of being overly nice? You're
Yes.
but people don't realize being honest, giving boundaries
Is a service.
is a nicety.
Yeah.
And like you are doing a kindness to your fellow being
Right.
by telling them the truth.
Well, it's like if, for instance, I stim a lot,
Yeah.
right? If I'm moving my hands around a lot,
Why would you say that?
why would you say that? It wouldn't be a bad thing for someone to say, it appears that you need to stim a lot. Is that something you're aware of? And if you are, these are some suggestions I might have for ways that you could stim in more socially acceptable ways. This seems like something that might be detracting from your performance on stage or in a meeting or as
Right.
you're making a presentation or in a class. It seems like there might be a better way for you to do this, right? That would be okay for a conversation between two people who trust each other.
So if someone is like an extra long blinker,
Oh yeah, I said that. The doctor, my gosh, I don't know if you can see it in the camera. He was so bad.
so he would squeeze his eyes really, really tight
Yes.
and hold them closed longer with every blink. And this is the same psychiatrist that you were talking
Yes.
to. So he
We're-
was just kind of
We're no longer in contact. We weren't a good fit for each other.
and I think that's what it boils down to. There's nothing wrong with him as a person. There's nothing wrong with you as a person.
I can't be the judge of that.
You know, we're not here to judge him.
I'm
okay?
I'm too invested in myself to think that there's something wrong with me, or to elaborate on all the things that are wrong with me. And I definitely don't want to get into his. I'm full
gosh.
on myself.
Oh, that's so fantastic. You're like, that's enough of that. So,
Yeah.
all right. So let's come back to these good-isms.
Good-isms.
So he was telling you, he should on you.
Yeah.
He was telling you what you should be doing.
Yes.
You should on yourself.
Well, but it wasn't that he was telling me what I should be doing. What he told me was this vague suggestion that implied that I wasn't doing enough. right? You should be more active. He didn't have an accurate understanding of how much activity I had had prior, and he didn't have an accurate understanding of what good activity looked like for me. He just said, I should be more active because he needed to prescribe something.
Right.
And so what he prescribed was something that he couldn't really go wrong with unless somebody called him out and said, you didn't say anything. All you said was, I'm insufficient.
And isn't it so interesting that that is what you heard, that I'm insufficient?
Yeah.
And that comes back to internal dialogue, because even someone shooting on you, that shame spiral that we start in our own brains of, well, I could have been doing this or I could have been doing that. If only I was a better person, maybe I wouldn't be so miserable all the time.
If only I accomplished more, maybe I would feel better.
Right.
It's not true.
It's not true.
None of it's
not true. It's,
well, but it's hard to break that cycle, right? And even if you're conscious of the cycle, it'll slip in easily. Yeah, slip in very easily.
So what did you do?
Well, first, I tried to listen to him, and we tried to have that conversation, and I followed it up with, I feel like perhaps you didn't hear me very well. He actually shoulded on me as well, telling me that my sleep habits were poor, I guess you could say. He told me that I should have a routine every night that would help me to fall asleep. And if I'm not falling asleep quickly enough, I should get out of bed and do something quiet until I felt tired, and then I should go back to bed. I've suffered with insomnia since I was in my teens.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know all these things. I've done the research. I've spent innumerable hours digging through what would help me sleep better.
And he knew this about you.
Well, all he knew, this was our second visit, all he knew was that I said I was having trouble sleeping and asked him if he had a suggestion.
Okay. And for some people, a routine works. For some people, it does.
Yeah, for some people, a routine works. And if he had asked me anything about what my normal routine was or what my experience with insomnia was, then he might not have made that suggestion, but he jumped straight to, let me prescribe something vague and basic.
What is it Ted Lasso says about being curious?
Yes.
About
Instead of judgmental.
Instead of judgmental, yes. And I think that that's also a good lesson, because
Be curious.
Be curious. Like, no matter where you are, what profession you're in, maybe take those few extra seconds to be curious.
As a mechanic, I can't count the number of times people have said, this is a symptom I'm experiencing on my car. Can you tell me how much it'll cost to fix it? And if I go based on their one symptom, I'm almost always wrong, both in what's wrong and what it's going to cost to fix it.
Well, yeah.
So being curious, definitely helpful. Dig deeper into what's going on, into what needs to be fixed, into what it's going to cost, where parts can come from, et cetera. It just makes sense.
It just makes sense.
Yeah, be curious.
So he wasn't curious.
No, not the least bit. I think he was overworked. He inherited a lot of patients from the doctor I was assigned to previously.
Yeah.
And so I think he was just too busy. I brought that up. I said, it seems like you're not hearing me very well. It seems like maybe you're too busy to see me. Is this something that's going to change, or do I need to find somebody else? And
Yeah.
he's like, well, I have a normal workload. Every doctor is this busy. And I was like, all right, never mind then.
I think what he was saying is, this is a you problem. And
I know.
you said, you know what?
That is where he was
Maybe
pushing.
maybe it is a me problem, and this is a problem I'm going to take care of.
Right. Yeah.
Find somebody else.
So I did. I found somebody else.
But I love that even in that space, you were able to speak up and advocate for yourself.
It hasn't always been that way.
I know.
I have spent a lot of time internalizing what people tell me, especially authority figures like a doctor. And so that's kind of a recent development to say,
awesome.
I fear that perhaps you didn't hear me. This is what I actually meant. You didn't seem like you responded in a way that would make sense with what I was trying to say.
So many people leave a situation like that and then replay it all in their heads. And like, I wish I would have said this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Since coming to this place where you feel like you can speak up for yourself, does that happen as frequently?
No, not nearly as much. Every now and again, if it's a really high energy, high intensity conversation, I'll come away from it and then slow down enough to think of what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I feel like I can take a deep breath in the conversation, slow things down a little bit, respond more slowly, and say the words that are really important to me.
So awesome.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken practice, obviously. I mean,
Right.
I'm getting old.
Doesn't happen overnight.
No.
I mean, we're young.
Okay.
We got plenty of time.
Say what you want.
I'm like, don't say you're getting old. If you're getting old, I'm older than you. So wait a minute.
Nobody's going to think that. People have been thinking I'm older than you for like 20 years.
Yeah,
More,
I think,
24 years.
I think since you were 13.
Yeah.
You were 13 and I was 16, and that was the first time I was offended that somebody thought you were older than me.
You should never have been offended by that. Come on.
But I was the one with the driver's license and you were not.
Yeah.
You know?
I could have gotten us into bars, though.
Yeah, probably.
So the thing is, though, so many people have common sense good-isms. They'll, like, if they hear that you're not doing well. I remember this one when I first started opening up about how much depression I dealt with and how difficult it was. People would say, well, you just have to choose to feel better.
Oh.
And that's a common sense good-ism, right? Because a few people have seen it work. They've made a conscious decision to not dwell on their problems, and that snapped them out of a self-destructive cycle. And so they think that everyone is in the same kind of self-destructive cycle that they just have to choose to get out of.
So I can just choose to be thinner? Can I just choose to have more muscle?
I mean, I think it's hard for me to opine on that because I don't know what's going on inside your head. But I think that with enough invested time and energy, those statements can be true.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is the time and the focused energy. Those are the things that make all the difference.
Well, because every choice is expensive, right? Every choice has a cost of time and energy,
Yep.
and maybe research and study and decision making. And what people don't realize when they're presenting a vague option like that is that they're presenting someone with a time sink and an energy sink and a research sink and a decision making sink. And for somebody who's overwhelmed, they might be dreadfully short, if not in debt, on each of those resources. They might be drawing on essential life force, just trying to make the decisions they have to get through the day on.
Right.
Yeah. And so to say, well, you need to figure out what's wrong with you and then decide how you're going to fix it, you're giving them a heavy load that they probably can't afford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is such a good point.
And so a common sense good-ism, more often than not, represents hours of research, tiered decision-making, planning, and then implementation. And all of it's very expensive.
And life is more nuanced than that.
So much more.
You can't just say blanket statement, do this and this will happen. That
Right.
would be lovely if that was the case, but
It's not all cause and effect.
it's not all cause and
Yeah,
effect.
we-
Right. Life
we-
is more nuanced.
We can't see all of the various factors going into a decision nor coming out of it.
Well, and what I do with coaching, working with brains and bodies and all of that seems very, very nuanced. But then you're also doing something very similar with machines,
Oh, yeah.
which seems very logical.
Well, you would think it has a limited number of parts, but
Right.
all of the parts are moving. All of the parts are wearing at different rates. I mean, I might have 8 identical parts that went into the machine at the exact same time, and one of them wears out unexpectedly, and there's no way I can find out why.
Yeah.
So what do? Do I replace the one or do I replace the 8? And so there's a risk factor that if I just replace the one, the other 7 may be close behind, because
Maybe.
who knows why they're wearing out, right?
It's just so interesting to look at the mechanics of what you do and the mechanics of what I do and see all the similarities
Yeah.
there. Which part of your routine is the thing that is causing you the biggest strain? Everything feels overwhelming, but is it that people keep telling you should something? Is it because you keep shitting on yourself? Is it because you need 30 more minutes of sleep at night? Is it because you're eating something that your body doesn't like? It's so
Also,
hard to say.
One of the things that helped me very early on, my very first therapist pointed out that mood comes and goes and shifts and changes on its own sometimes based on factors that we don't completely understand.
Yeah.
Some of the factors are obvious. If somebody yells at you, then perhaps you feel bad. And maybe that's a cause and effect that you understand.
Sure.
But then on a different day, maybe that same conversation where somebody's angry with you doesn't make any difference at all. And it just slides right off, right? And
You
so
called it, what did you call it? Mood protection?
mood protection. Maybe you have mood protection that
those,
day.
Those, and where does the mood protection come from?
Where does it come
actually
from?
know.
What do you even
but
do
it's
with
great
it?
when you have it.
Well, yeah, because on those mood protection days, I mean, I've had mood protected days where for one reason or another that I can't quite put my finger on, I have failed dismally and
Yeah.
made horrible mistakes and butchered jobs that I would normally be good at. And what did I do? I just brushed it off
Yeah.
and scheduled to come back and fix the problem and maybe shelled out money up from my own pocket to buy parts. And none of it mattered because I was so optimistic, not choosing to be optimistic. I just was optimistic that everything was going to be fine and future me would take care of that. And then I've had days that were completely the opposite, where everything went right. I came home with extra money in my pocket and extra time on my hands and extra love from everyone around me. And I felt terrible.
You're just mad.
Well, maybe mad,
Or
maybe
depressed,
sad,
or-
deep weight on my chest, the weight of the world on my shoulders. And who can explain that, right? There's no easily visible cause and effect.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, my guess would be when there's not usually a visible cause and effect like that, then it's a chemical imbalance.
Right.
And that's when it comes to, figure out medications and that sort of thing.
Oh man, that's such a mess. Digging through medications. I've been trying different mental health medications for like 4 years now.
Yeah.
And each one has its own ups and downs. I won't get into too much of it. But the important thing about mood that I realized in that first conversation with my first therapist was that sometimes it comes and goes without my input.
Yeah.
Sometimes happiness is there for a moment, whether I contributed or not. And sometimes sadness is there for a moment, whether I contributed or not. It's kind of like the weather. The weather changes around us with or without our input. There's not much we can do there, but we choose how we react to it.
Like waves in the ocean.
Right.
Feel their emotions come and go.
Yeah, they come and they go. Well, and the interesting thing for me to realize about that wasn't so much, yes, this happens to me, or yes, this happens around me. The most powerful bit about it was drawing the parallel and saying, if the weather is really bad, I don't go out and work and subject myself to bad weather.
Right.
I hole up, I rest, I get things done in a quieter, more sedate manner, things that I can do with low energy. And if the weather is really good, then I make hay. I get out, I do as much work as I can, I take care of myself, all the things that I do when I have high energy.
And that's self-care.
Yes.
That is you figuring out what your body needs.
It's very powerful.
And responding.
Yeah.
And that makes all the difference.
And when I changed the rule for myself from I have a daily routine that I should do every day to the best thing I can do is recognize the amount of energy and time and decision making I can budget and then allow myself to work within that sphere, then all the guilt disappears. Because if I wake up to a low energy day, then it's not a big deal for me to say, I'm not doing as much today and there's no guilt. The weather's bad. I'm not going outside. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm protecting myself more.
So if someone worked in a regular 9-to-5 job and didn't have the same kind of flexibility as you do, what would you recommend?
I watched somebody who was suffering from pretty severe depression and struggling through a bad relationship literally watch TV at work for months on end.
Gosh. Whoa.
Months. They would go in every day.
An office job?
Yep, in an office job. They would fulfill the responsibilities that were required of them.
Okay.
And then rather than getting up and making a big show of having nothing to do, they would turn on Netflix and hunker down and rest all day long. And that gave them the energy and the space that they needed to get through
Wow.
everything they were doing outside of work. It's absolutely okay to measure out the amount of energy we have and recognize it.
Yeah.
There's an unhealthy push sometimes to excel in everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
But it's impossible.
It
It's
is
an unrealistic
completely impossible.
expectation. There are some things that we can excel at, but it's a combination of predisposition and desire and then expended energy.
Right.
Right. And so if you're in a situation where you're struggling, you recognize the bare minimum you can do. The bills you absolutely have to pay, and you pay those, and then you do whatever you can to stay caught up. Stay caught up on energy, stay caught up on rest,
Yeah.
stay caught up on nutrition, whatever's going to give back to you, you do those things.
I mean, I think we all understand a budget pretty well.
I hope so.
Okay, maybe not a budget, but like if you have 10 cookies in front of you.
and you give one to a mouse,
Right.
then he'll ask you for some milk. Where are you going with this?
If you have 10 cookies in front of you and it costs you 4 cookies to go to work, and it costs you, a cookie to brush your teeth, and it
Right.
costs you a cookie. You're budgeting out those cookies over the day, and you
Yes.
get to the end of the day, and your friends are like, "Hey, come out and have dinner with me," and you're like, "That's a 5 cookie job,
Right.
And I don't have any. I have 2 cookies left."
Well, and it's really important to recognize realistically, do I get cookies from going out with my friends, or does it take cookies for me to go out with my
100%.
friends?
Yep.
Because for some people, they recharge around friends, right?
Yep.
And maybe they let everyone hear about the difficulties and they get boosted by,
Yeah.
people who are interested in buoying them up. But for some people like me, I just want to go home.
Yeah.
I just want to go home and rest and hide out and relax and then deal with everything again the next day.
Introverted versus extroverted.
I think that's the case.
Yeah. So you definitely get more energy and recover alone and quietly.
If I can hide out by myself, everything gets better,
And I am never happier than when I'm with people.
right? It builds you up.
If I am like exhausted, if I am completely depleted, and someone is like, "Okay, well, we don't have to go do anything, but can I just come and like be with you?" I'm like, "I feel amazing."
Right? They just give it to you. They give
Right.
you all that energy. But
I'll
again,
take it.
it's one of those situations where a common sense goodism might be damaging. Because
Yeah.
let's say in my situation, I'm feeling low, I'm feeling down, I'm worn out, I've expended all that I had,
Mm-hmm.
and someone sees that, and maybe I tell them about it because maybe I'm opening up more and letting people
Yeah.
know how I really am. And they say, you should really surround yourself with people who care about you. Their intentions are good because maybe it works for them.
Sure.
But that's toxic to me when I'm worn out,
Mm-hmm.
right? Saying that I should surround myself with people who care about me, then I have to go through, well, I don't really want to be around everybody, but maybe
Right.
it's the medicine that I need. Maybe it's the thing I should do so that I'll feel better. And then it's this cascading decision tree that ultimately, if I could short circuit it, comes back to, you're wrong, I'm going home.
Well, and at 38, I'd like to think that maybe you understand yourself well enough
I hope so.
to say, "You know what? Thank you so much for your advice, but that's not really what I need right now."
But most of the time, people who are making that suggestion aren't close enough to me to know.
Perfect.
So I just thank them for their interest and
There
move
you go.
on. I don't
There
even
you
have to tell them they're wrong.
They meant well.
Yeah.
It's the thought that counts.
Yeah.
Right. So if you were going to give our listeners today anything to take away, like one thing or a couple things to take away from this,
Ooh, budget well.
budget well. You
And
only have so
budget-
many cookies.
And budget yourself first. A mental health day is a sick day.
Yeah.
If you have a sick day and you have to take it, take care of yourself.
Because if you are mentally unwell, you could say you are sick.
Yeah, schizophrenia.
Okay, well, yes. Okay, but we're not jumping to that extreme.
Right. But let's just say the difference between the cold and cancer, they're both sicknesses.
Yeah.
Right? The difference between depression and more serious depression and suicidality, it's all on the same spectrum. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm unwell today and I know what's going to fix it, and it's not going to be going to work or taking care of someone else or being around people.
So give yourself permission to rest and recover.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to?
Throw out any advice that isn't actually good for you.
Ooh,
Just
so good.
just let it slide off.
Put it in the trash can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
drop
I love that. Oh, that is so fantastic. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for sharing this with us
was a
today.
real pleasure.
I
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back again
I'd do it
sometime
again.
if you'd like to come.
Yeah, good company.
If you want to, just cannot get enough of Adam. If you want to hear more, then let us know, and we will have him back again. If there's stuff you want to talk about, then let us know. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. As always, you can follow us on all your social media platforms. Just find us at Whole Life Vitality, and we will see you next time. Bye, friends.
Bye.